Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
The morning sun streamed through the window, casting a warm glow over the rumpled bedspread. I stretched lazily, savoring the quiet moments before the chaos of wedding preparations would begin. In just a week, I would be walking down the aisle to marry Ronald, the man I thought was the love of my life. Little did I know, my life was about to be shattered. I heard the familiar ping of my phone, signaling a new message. I reached over to the nightstand, expecting a cheerful text from one of my bridesmaids about last-minute plans. Instead, it was a notification from a group chat I didn't recognize. Confused, I opened it, and my heart skipped a beat as I read the names: Ronald, my best friend Irma, and shockingly, my own mother. Curiosity turned to dread as I read the first few lines of their conversation. "Are we still meeting at the usual place tonight?" Irma had typed. Ronald replied with a winking emoji and a suggestive comment. My mother's response was even more chilling. "Just make sure Cassie doesn't find out. We can't afford any slip-ups before the wedding." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the messages, each one more damning than the last. They detailed secret meetings, elaborate lies to cover their tracks, and even my family's active role in keeping me in the dark. Desperate for more information, I scrolled to the very beginning of the chat. The group had been formed 14 months ago. 14 months of deceit. I came across a message from my mother dated a year ago. "Cassie's out of town this weekend. Perfect time for you two to spend some quality time together." The casual tone in which my mother had written made my blood boil. I threw my phone on the bed and stood up, pacing the room as my mind raced. How could they do this to me? My mother, who had always been my rock, was complicit in this betrayal. And Irma, my best friend since childhood, how could she smile at me, knowing she was stabbing me in the back? I picked up my phone again, this time determined to gather evidence. Screenshot after screenshot, I documented every incriminating message and photo. My fingers moved mechanically, my mind numb with shock and fury. I had to confront them, but I needed a plan. A confrontation now would give them time to deny everything and twist the narrative. That's when it hit me. The rehearsal dinner was the perfect opportunity. With all our friends and family gathered, they wouldn't be able to hide or lie their way out. I would expose their betrayal publicly, forcing them to face the consequences of their actions. Later that day, I called my cousin Emily. She was the only one I could trust completely. "Hey, Emily, can you come over? I need to talk to you about something important." "Of course, Cassie. I'll be there in an hour," she replied, her voice filled with concern. When Emily arrived, I led her to my room and handed her my phone. "Read these," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She scrolled through the messages, her eyes widening with every passing second. "Oh my God, Cassie. I don't even know what to say. I'm so sorry." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. "I need your help, Emily. I'm going to expose them at the rehearsal dinner. Can you help me make sure everything goes according to plan?" Emily nodded without hesitation. "Absolutely. Whatever you need, I'm here for you." We spent the rest of the day planning every detail. I scheduled the screenshots to be sent to all our friends and family during Ronald's speech at the dinner. Emily would be my lookout, making sure everything went smoothly. We rehearsed the plan multiple times, anticipating every possible reaction. That night, as I lay in bed, sleep eluded me. My mind replayed the messages over and over, a painful reminder of the betrayal. But beneath the hurt, a steely resolve began to form. They had taken my trust and shattered it, but I would take back my dignity and expose their lies. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of grim determination. I went through the motions of my day, playing the part of the excited bride-to-be. Ronald and Irma were none the wiser, their deceitful smiles cutting through me like knives. My mother, too, acted as if everything was normal, her betrayal hidden behind a mask of maternal concern. In the afternoon, I received a call from Ronald. "Hey, Cassie. Just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. Excited for the rehearsal dinner tonight?" I forced a cheerful tone into my voice. "Yeah, can't wait. It's going to be great to have everyone together." "Absolutely," he replied. "I'm so happy we're finally getting married. I love you so much." I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. "I love you too, Ronald. See you tonight." After hanging up, I stared at my phone, the weight of the upcoming confrontation pressing down on me, but I couldn't back down now. The truth had to come out, no matter the cost. As the evening approached, I got ready for the dinner, carefully applying makeup to hide the dark circles under my eyes. I slipped into my dress, feeling like an actress preparing for a role. The woman in the mirror looked calm and composed, but inside, I was a storm of emotions. Emily came over early to help me get ready. We had practiced our plan to the point where every move was choreographed, every reaction anticipated. She handed me a delicate gold bracelet, a gift from our grandmother. "For luck," she said, fastening it around my wrist. "Thanks, Emily," I replied, my voice betraying the storm of emotions inside me. "I'm going to need it." The restaurant was already bustling when we arrived. Fairy lights twinkled above the elegantly set tables, casting a soft glow on the gathered guests. The air was thick with the scent of fresh flowers and the sound of clinking glasses. I scanned the room, my eyes locking onto Ronald and Irma, who were laughing together at the bar. My mother was nearby, chatting animatedly with some relatives. They all looked so carefree, so oblivious to the impending reckoning. As we made our way through the crowd, Emily squeezed my hand. "You've got this, Cassie. Just remember to breathe." I nodded, taking a deep breath to steady myself. We were greeted by a chorus of congratulations and well wishes. I forced smiles and exchanged pleasantries, all the while feeling the weight of the screenshots burning a hole in my purse. Ronald approached me, his smile broad and genuine. "There's my beautiful bride-to-be. You look stunning, Cassie." "Thanks, Ronald," I replied, my voice as steady as I could manage. "You don't look too bad yourself." He leaned in to kiss me, and I turned my head slightly so his lips brushed my cheek instead. "Sorry, just trying to keep my lipstick intact," I lied. He chuckled, oblivious. "Of course. Well, let's enjoy the evening. It's our special night." As we mingled with the guests, I could feel the tension building inside me. Every time I saw Ronald or Irma laughing, or my mother's seemingly innocent smile, the anger bubbled up, threatening to spill over. I kept glancing at Emily, who gave me reassuring nods from across the room. Finally, the moment arrived. The room quieted as Ronald tapped his glass with a spoon, signaling the start of his speech. He stood at the head of the table, looking out over our friends and family with a smile that made my stomach churn. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he began, his voice warm and sincere. "Cassie and I are so grateful to have such wonderful friends and family to support us as we start this new chapter in our lives together." The room erupted in applause, but my hands remained clenched at my sides. Emily caught my eye and gave a subtle nod. It was time. I discreetly pulled out my phone and activated the scheduled messages. Within seconds, the room was filled with the sound of buzzing phones. Confused murmurs spread through the crowd as people began checking their screens. Faces turned from smiles to shock, to anger, and then disbelief. "What the hell is this?" someone shouted, breaking the uneasy silence. Ronald's smile faltered as he looked around, bewildered. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice tinged with panic. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. "What's going on, Ronald, is that you've been lying to me, to all of us. You, Irma, and my own mother have been having an affair and hiding it from me for 14 months. A collective gasp swept through the room. My mother's face turned ashen, her eyes wide with shock. Irma's expression was a mixture of horror and disbelief. Ronald opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. "How could you?" I continued, my voice shaking with a mix of fury and heartbreak. How could all of you betray me like this? My own mother, my best friend, and the man I was supposed to marry. The room descended into chaos. People were shouting, crying, and frantically checking their phones. My aunt stood up, her face red with anger. How could you do this to Cassie? She screamed at my mother. She's your daughter. My mother's facade finally crumbled. I never wanted her. She shouted back, her voice filled with venom. She's been a burden from the day she was born. The room went silent, the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. Logan stepped forward, his face pale and drawn. Is that true? Have you been unfaithful all these years? He asked, his voice breaking. My mother's silence was damning. Logan turned to me, his eyes filled with sorrow. I'm so sorry, Cassie. I didn't know. Tears streamed down my face, but I stood tall. It's too late for apologies. The truth is out, and now you all have to face the consequences. Ronald finally found his voice. Cassie, please, let me explain. Explain what? I interrupted, my voice rising. That you've been lying to me for over a year. That you've been sleeping with my best friend, and my mother helped you cover it up. Irma stepped forward, her eyes pleading. Cassie, we never meant to hurt you. Save it, I snapped. You're both dead to me. My grandfather, who had been silent until now, stood up and slammed his fist on the table. This is unacceptable. I didn't raise you to behave like this, he shouted at my mother. My grandmother was trying to hold back my aunt, who was screaming every expletive she could think of at my mother. You are a heartless and cruel, my aunt yelled, her voice echoing through the room. My other bridesmaids turned on Irma, hurling insults and accusations. How could you do this to her? You're supposed to be her friend. In the midst of the chaos, I felt a strange sense of detachment, as if I were watching a scene from a movie. The confrontation had taken on a life of its own, spiraling out of control. I could barely process the whirlwind of emotions crashing over me. Emily appeared at my side, her face filled with concern. Cassie, we need to get you out of here, she said, gently taking my arm. I nodded numbly, allowing her to lead me towards the exit. As we made our way through the crowd, I saw Ronald trying to follow us. Cassie, wait, he called, his voice desperate. I turned to him, my eyes blazing with anger. Stay away from me, Ronald. I never want to see you again. Emily and I pushed through the doors and into the cool night air. She quickly ushered me into her car, and we sped away from the restaurant, leaving the chaos behind. As we drove in silence, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. The weight of the betrayal, the loss of trust, and the shattering of my relationships pressed down on me like a heavy blanket. Emily reached over and squeezed my hand. You did the right thing, Cassie. You needed to expose them. I know, I replied, my voice barely a whisper, but it still hurts so much. She nodded, her eyes filled with sympathy. I know it does, but you're strong, and you'll get through this. We'll get through this together. The aftermath of the rehearsal dinner was a whirlwind of emotions, accusations, and revelations. I spent the night at Emily's, unable to return to the apartment I once shared with Ronald. I barely slept, my mind replaying the evening's events in an endless loop. By morning, I felt like I had lived a lifetime in the span of a few hours. When I woke up, Emily was already up, making coffee. She handed me a steaming mug and sat beside me on the couch. How are you holding up? Like I've been hit by a truck, I admitted, taking a sip of the hot, bitter liquid. But I guess that's to be expected. She nodded. You're stronger than you think, Cassie. Just take it one step at a time. I spent the day in a daze, trying to process everything that had happened. My phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls from family and friends. Some were supportive, others were accusatory, siding with Ronald and Irma. I ignored most of them, unable to handle the barrage of emotions. In the afternoon, there was a knock on the door. Emily opened it to reveal my aunt and cousin, their faces etched with concern. Aunt Linda, Rachel. I greeted them, my voice breaking. What are you doing here? Linda pulled me into a tight hug. We came to take you home, sweetheart. You shouldn't be alone right now. I hesitated, glancing at Emily. She nodded encouragingly. Go with them, Cassie. You need your family right now. With a heavy heart, I packed a few essentials and left with Linda and Rachel. Their house was a sanctuary compared to the chaos I had left behind. As we drove, Linda filled me in on what had happened after I left the rehearsal dinner. Your mother went ballistic after you left, she said, her voice tight with anger. She blamed you for everything, saying you've always been a problem. I clenched my fists, the betrayal cutting deep. I can't believe she would say that, after everything she's done. Believe it, Rachel said, glancing at me from the front seat. She's been showing her true colors for a while now, and Logan is finally done with her. We arrived at their house, and Linda ushered me inside, setting me up in the guest room. Make yourself at home, Cassie. You're welcome to stay as long as you need. Thank you, I said, tears welling up in my eyes. I don't know what I'd do without you. As the days passed, I began to piece together the fractured remnants of my life. I contacted my landlord to arrange moving out of the apartment and started looking for a new place. My boss, understanding the gravity of my situation, granted me extended leave to deal with everything. One afternoon, as I was sorting through some old photos, my phone rang. It was Logan. Cassie, can we talk? He asked, his voice weary. Sure, I replied, bracing myself for another emotional conversation. I wanted to apologize for everything, he said. I had no idea what your mother was doing, and I'm so sorry you had to go through this. It's not your fault, Logan, I said softly. You were deceived, just like I was. He sighed. I filed for divorce. I can't stay married to someone who's betrayed me so deeply, and I found out some things about your paternity. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Your mother admitted that you're the product of an affair she had while she was married to your father. I'm so sorry, Cassie. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. I always suspected something was off, but hearing it confirmed, it's a lot to take in. I know, Logan said, but I want you to know that you'll always be family to me, no matter what. Thank you, Logan, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. That means a lot. After the call, I sat in silence, trying to absorb the new information. My entire life felt like a lie, built on a foundation of deceit, but I was determined not to let it break me. In the midst of this turmoil, Nathan emerged as an unexpected pillar of support. He had always been a good friend, but now he went above and beyond to help me through the darkest days. He took care of returning Ronald's belongings, ensuring I didn't have to face him. One evening, as we sat on the porch of Linda's house, Nathan turned to me, his eyes filled with concern. Cassie, you've been through hell. How are you holding up, really? I don't know, I admitted. Some days I feel like I'm drowning. Other days, I'm just numb. He nodded. That's normal. Just know that you don't have to go through this alone. I'm here for you, no matter what. Thank you, Nathan, I said, my voice choked with emotion. I don't know what I'd do without you. We're going to get through this, he said firmly, one step at a time. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, moving arrangements, and emotional upheaval. Logan's divorce from my mother became public knowledge, causing ripples of shock and gossip throughout our social circle. My mother's reputation was in tatters, and she faced the consequences of her actions alone. One evening, as I was packing up the last of my belongings from the apartment, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find Irma standing there, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Cassie, please, can we talk? She begged, her voice trembling. I hesitated, my heart hardening at the sight of her. What could you possibly have to say, Irma? I'm so sorry, she said, tears streaming down her face. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know how much I regret everything. Regret? I echoed, my voice cold. Do you regret the affair, or do you regret getting caught? She flinched, her guilt evident. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you deeply, but I never meant for things to go this far. That doesn't change what you did, I said, my anger bubbling to the surface. You betrayed me, Irma. You and Ronald destroyed everything we had. She sobbed, clutching at the doorframe. I don't expect you to forgive me, Cassie, but I need you to know that I'm truly sorry. I looked at her, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and pity. It's too late for apologies, Irma. The damage is done. I need to move on with my life, and I suggest you do the same. She nodded, defeated. I understand. Goodbye, Cassie. As she walked away, I felt a strange sense of closure. The confrontation hadn't healed the wounds, but it had given me a chance to say my piece. With the support of Emily, Nathan, and my family, I slowly began to rebuild my life. I found a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood, a place where I could start fresh. I started therapy to help process the trauma and began focusing on my work again. One day, as I was unpacking a box of books in my new apartment, Nathan dropped by with a housewarming gift, a small potted plant. I thought this might brighten up the place, he said with a smile. It's perfect, I replied, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Thank you, Nathan. As we arranged the plant on the windowsill, I realized that despite the pain and betrayal, I had found something precious in the rubble of my old life. True friends, a supportive family, and the strength to face whatever came next. My foundations had been fractured, but I was building something new, something stronger.